The student, the athlete, the culture. Welcome back, everyone, to the second series of Moses Squared podcast. We hope you enjoyed our last episode. We are now streaming episodes on Apple Podcasts, so make sure you subscribe to our channel as well as YouTube and Instagram and leave a review. Now, let's get into episode 13, the MJ Effect.
Welcome back to Moses Squared, the podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We have another great episode for you today. We're going to start off with a very controversial topic. Something if you're an American, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, you've heard about this. There was a young man that was brutally murdered by some vigilantes or Crime Stoppers, whatever they're calling themselves. But nonetheless, there was a 25-year-old young man named Ahmaud Arbery who lost his life. Lauren, what are your thoughts on this? I saw the video.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't have watched it, but
Yeah.
I saw the video. Very, very tough to watch for me being an young African-American male. What's your take on this? What's your feeling?
So I feel like everyone else, kind of forcing themselves to look at that video was sad, and for me, I think it hit home. Obviously, I'm an African American. I'm a female. However, I think at some point it gets like you get fed up of seeing the same things. And although we have so many things going on within our country right now in regards to like the coronavirus pandemic, it's like even at our lowest point as a country, we can't bond together. We can't find a way to, we're all, struggling from similar situations, whether that be health scares, whether that may be financial issues right now. And like, even in this time, we still can't figure it out. And a lot of my sadness or, anxiety that I got from watching this video and this entire situation was just more so, these are two family members, father and son, who are now charged a week later from the incident. They were charged yesterday, which was Thursday, May 7th. And to me, I always think racism is something that is taught. So you see a father who's 64 and a son who's 34 years old. They've lived life by now, and the influences that they may have over other people. And so my mind just starts going down that path and just, what can I be doing, while I'm sitting here in Maryland, African American female. And really what came to mind was to just pray over the people who have hate within them, who may be angry, mad, sad about something that has nothing to do with Ahmaud Arbery. And really just do my best to make sure that my platform, that my brand as Lauren Brielle, Lauren Moses, resembles positivity and love. And that's all that, that I feel like I can do in this setting. There's a petition going around hoping that it would help these two men get charged, which happened. So I don't know. It was a whirlwind of emotions, but I know for a lot of black men around the country, they were fueled. They were infuriated. They were fed up, like I said.
Yeah, and I'm probably one of those men because, there comes a certain point, and I try to be a calculated man. Person, individual. I try to think things through and, rationalize with people and try to understand even when their views don't match yours, but it becomes, it gets to a certain point as a man, as a person where you're like, are we just that? Are we just, the hunted? Are we the prey? And if so, then it's time to stand up. It does become infuriating because as a man, society tells you you're here to protect your family. And I'm talking society norms, quote unquote.
Yeah.
You're here to protect your family and, protect your name and build a legacy and all these things. And it's like a lot of thoughts flow through your head when you feel like you're being attacked, and that puts you in a different mode. So I had to really, like yourself, I had to pray, I had to calm myself and really take a step back and think about it because we're in a country still that it's more than just racism and teaching. It's systematic, for two white males to gun a man down on camera, whether color aside. It shouldn't take a week for officials to arrest these folks in an obvious crime. So that's where it becomes systemic. How do these folks get to even roam the earth for another week?
Exactly.
And if the shoe were on the other foot, we already know that man, those two men probably wouldn't even have made it through the day.
And then it makes me,
and I mean alive.
And it makes me think, obviously social media is a big part of our world now. And, we're going to get into some of the MJ documentary a little bit later, which social media, I think, the lack of it back then, it played a lot on, his, it helped him a lot.
It helped Mike.
But in this instance, I think that, if this video didn't get out a week later, would these guys still be walking around free to do as they please? But this situation also brings me back to an interview that I was, and I don't listen to G Herbo, but I was listening. He's a rapper from Chicago. I was listening to a interview that he was doing about his album called PTSD. And, he talks about the things that he witnessed as a kid. More than half of the people he grew up with are either gone, a lot of them gone, some of them in jail, and just having to deal with death. And I think that, that for some reason, this triggered me to 2017 when a lot of, the police brutality cases were coming out. And a lot of that was just all over social media. And seeing Ahmaud Arbery's face all over social media yesterday and the previous days, it was just like, here we go again. Because, a lot of it is sensationalization as well. And so I want to understand, when we're posting his face and we're causing or bringing awareness to this incident, we want to make sure that we're doing it with right intentions, not just to say, hey, another black man's murdered by white guys. It's to say, how can we be better? How can we stop this from happening? What can we be doing on our own front? This was in Glenn County in Georgia, and, Georgia's having issues with trying to figure out if they want to raise their stay-at-home orders or not. And I just think, being involved in your local governments will help bet more than, voting presidential election. Personally, I think it's important to vote for the presidential election, but I think those local governments are just as important because they are the ones who are in charge of, the gun laws in that state or that county, who are in charge of, getting instances like this taken care of on the front end rather than waiting a week later to arrest these guys. So I just think really knowing your value and your power in whatever space that you're in is extremely important.
Yeah, and to piggyback off where you were going, in the PTSD aspect, it's interesting that, he names his album that, and, I've read different studies and seen different videos of young black males claiming to have PTSD just from living here in America. Yeah. And PTSD stems from having a visual effect of something graphic, desensitization to a thing, being able to put yourself into another man's shoes, fearing a death or fearing a certain type of death. And like you said, because of the internet, because of the social media, I've seen more black men gunned down on camera in the last 24 months than I've ever seen prior to the 29 years of my life. Yeah. So for even a man like myself, I drive, I'm amongst different cultures, I'm amongst different people. And it's like, you still do have an extra thought. I don't know if it's PTSD, everybody's affected differently, but you do think man, what if that was me jogging? Yeah. What if that was me, trying to support my family in front of that store? What if that was me in a car with my kids and y'all wanted to shoot through my seat and through my body? And what if, and then those are the fears you have. What if it was my dad? Or what if it was my sister? And those are the fears you start to have, and it creates a phobia almost. Yeah. and in turn, the PTSD. So it's like, for those young men, for those young women that may be experiencing those feelings, it's okay for us to go seek some help. It's okay for us to go talk to people about this and let these feelings out instead of caging them until we explode. Yep. So that's my advice for the young adults, even older. It's okay in our culture. We've made it so that it seems like we can't get help, and that's a lie. I've been in therapy. I've seen people to help me transition in life, to help me transition away from the game of football. Whatever it is, it's okay. And those type of things really just changes your perspective. It doesn't change who you are. Changes your perspective on situations, which will give you a special light. So, before going on my little soapbox, I just want to say that because we do love you.
Yeah.
And to all our listeners, we do love you. That's why we talk about these topics, because they are important to us as well.
Exactly. And I mean, I would just follow up by saying the same thing. Reach out, speak to someone, whether it's a professional or not. Just getting it off your chest sometimes is like, whew, okay. Like I spoke with a friend this past week who had been holding on to something for a week, and she was like, okay, I can just let it out to you guys. And it's just like, whoever it is to you who can really just help you relieve whatever you're going through, just do that. It's better than keeping it in, bottling it up. But like we said, we want to get off of this topic. We do want to say rest in peace to Ahmaud Arbery, and prayers and love to his family, to his neighbors, who may be feeling attacked along with him, who may be feeling upset, sad, whatever the case may be. We're just gonna send prayers and love their way.
Yeah, that's the best way. Rest in peace, Ahmaud. Yeah. Moving on from Ahmaud, another gentleman who is in the news, one of our idols, a guy I've looked up to growing up all my life, and kind of a cool, way to slide into this is Michael Jordan. And his documentary's finally come out.
Yes.
He's one of the guys who, growing up, I looked up to, man, clean cut, said it all over, well-spoken, all of the things.
He's swaggy.
Swaggy, don't forget that. Michael's the swaggiest, and it's like all of the things you want to be. And I think that parents wanted their children to be, for the most part.
I actually have a story.
Let's get into it. Let's get into it. What do you think about Mike?
So for the documentary, let's start there. I was pleasantly surprised. I had no idea how they were going to do this, like it kind of just came up, I think, on an Instagram Live. LeBron was on Instagram Live with someone, and he was kind of just like, come on, ESPN, like, y'all ain't got nothing else to put out there.
Right. If LeBron said this, somebody going to listen.
Exactly. So I think it's been extremely insightful for someone, and I said this a little bit on my Instagram post, it's been super insightful for someone who grew up during my time watching basketball. Right. I think when I was super young, I wasn't really watching men's basketball like that. It was more so women's basketball. You had Cappie Pondexter, Demaya White or Wright, Monica Wright, Candace Parker. And so like I was just into the women's basketball at that time. And so seeing what Michael Jordan meant to so many people, but not only like seeing what he meant, but like seeing how his characteristics as a leader came out, how they were like, it's so funny because I was watching and I'm like, okay, so Kobe was literally Mike.
Right.
It's so funny because he's gonna demand you to do things. Like he's not asking you to do anything. Like it's either you're gonna do it or like he's gonna walk off the court and there won't be practice anymore. Like, so I'm enjoying it a lot. However, I have a story. So my mom knew MJ back in the day.
Oh, okay.
So my mom went to North Carolina Central University, and his sister, I don't want to mess this up, but I believe his sister also went there, and that's not too far from UNC where MJ was. Sure. And so she just told me about a story where she had to drive with his sister, I think, to take him to the airport to go to LA or something. I don't remember the exact location, but they had like instances like that where they would just like kind of fly by one another. And, she said he was always cool, calm and collected. Nothing too crazy. Wasn't a huge partier. But yeah, I mean, it was so cool to just see that my mom, hung out, but shared the same space as MJ.
Kind of, yeah. She was an associate of Michael Jordan.
No, but
there's no way around it.
For you, how was it to watch this documentary, someone that you saw on the court, and he's a very private person, so seeing this side of him with his teammates, his old coaches, speaking about him highly, and then some, had other things to say.
Yeah, you know what? It's very interesting, and I'm still watching it. I'm probably almost studying it because he was such an interesting person to me. The competitive level that this man has, I mean, it was almost toxic. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're praising him now, but the reality is, in the moment, his teammates weren't, but that's almost how greatness is created. In the moment, we don't really, it's hard to appreciate it, and that's why you kind of have to stay in the moment because it may not be glamorous. And I always use the, basically the example of or the comparison of training camp. It's one of my processes. Training camp is more of an idea. It's like that's the grind time before the season, whether you're a pro, whether you're in college, whether you're in high school.
Yeah.
when I was a pro, we went up to, we stayed at St. Joe College in dorm on cots. I'm like, why are we staying in cots? You know what I'm saying? We pro, why we? But you got to get through it, and that's part of every single year. You got to get through those 2-3 grueling weeks. It's not glamorous, but at the end of those 3 weeks, the lights on, the camera's on, so it goes from really ugly to beautiful. But nonetheless, you got to embrace that process. And Mike was a machine about it.
Yeah.
I don't know when this guy slept because it sounded like he lived a schedule of basketball at night.
Yes.
Gambling all night, golf all day, practice during and then back to
It's like he's a machine. It was kind of like, whatever he decided or wanted to do in that moment, he did, but it wasn't like he was doing it, like halfway. He did it 100%. And that's why you can respect people like MJ and Kobe Bryant. And I think the reason why I see this such a similarity is because obviously, like, I've seen Kobe Bryant, on and off the court in different aspects. So I think this documentary, and like I was saying, social media, if social media was a thing during the time of MJ, I think it would have played a lot into, how people perceived him. I think media perceived him one way because they were in the locker rooms, and, there was a part about, being in locker rooms. And I have an old professor who says, it's a different monster. These guys are unapologetically themselves after a win and after a loss. After they lose in the 1989 NBA championship and after they win. Like, it's like you have to... the media side of it is like a whole nother monster. But in regards to him as a teammate, how do you think you would have done if you had a teammate that was as driven, as competitive? And I can imagine that you probably have. You've played for some major teams in the NFL. And, like, those leaders, like, how do they bring that competitive nature out of their teammates? And for you, who's someone, like, offense and defense don't really, like, I don't know. I don't know if they, like, communicate as often. Mesh much. Yeah. But how does that work?
It's when you have a leader like that, it's pretty easy, because you're going to follow in their footsteps. You almost feel a pull, and as a competitor, a hardworking player, person, all these things, when you see somebody else working harder than you, you naturally want to up your game. And that's leading by example. And I always kind of tell a story from when I came from University of Iowa and left and went to Tulane. The culture was totally different. We had top of the line everything at Iowa. Trainers. When I got to Tulane, there was a culture shift. And I had to lead it with my actions, not so much with my words. I would be at the practice after 2-hour practice. I'm staying out there. Guys like, yo, Dez, what you doing? Practice over it. I'm like, I'm not practicing for you guys. I'm practicing for where I'm going, where I'm headed. I had to, and as the season went on, this was my redshirt year. As the season went on, it was 2, 3, 4 guys. Even maybe guys that wasn't doing stuff with me, I catch them on the other side of the field getting their work. Now it's 10 guys. Now it's, the whole team. And now we're looking at it 10 years later, a program like Tulane, where prior to myself, they had 5-6 pros. These guys are putting out 5-6 pros a year, and this is just an ethic that I brought from Iowa, who has this, pipeline of pros and, kind of understands the process and help Tulane transition. But that's just the type of energy you have to have. It wasn't easy. And a lot of days it was, by myself. But when you have a teammate like that, or a teammate like Michael Jordan, who is really going to just demand, and he's going to go and do it, you got to raise
you have to buy in. You have to buy in.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want to be the weakest link. Team is only as strong as their weakest link. And then you have 100%. Someone like that, that means that they are willing to sacrifice. And I mean, for someone like myself, whenever I saw a teammate go out on a limb for me, it was like, all right, I got you. I got your back. Next time I got this. I got, and so one aspect that I want to bring up is just the politics, the political side of the NBA during that time. MJ, a lot of talks of him not being a political activist with his platform. And then even down to him gambling. Is there a fine line between a star athlete, an all-star athlete, being just an all-star athlete, but also standing up for what their community that they associate with deem as important enough to, side with?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about Michael Jordan, is I think he kind of became that. His brand was so big. when he was so young that he put his brand above everything.
Yeah.
You know, that was kind of how we knew Michael. I mean, still we're talking about Michael Jordan. We're saying the man full name.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's
it's
true.
like Michael
Mike.
Jordan is a brand, right? You know,
we don't walk around saying Mike. Yeah.
Mike, like, yeah, you don't say Mike unless you really know Mike.
Yeah.
You know, it's like otherwise it's Michael Jordan. You know, put some respect on it. He wasn't that type of an athlete, and I think that's where we really gain the respects from the of the LeBron Jameses, of the Muhammad Ali's, because although Mike's great, don't get us wrong, the impact that he made on the culture was. I mean, he's still having it. Kids that don't even know, had never seen Michael, never seen a ball head, still what they, but what the LeBron Jameses are doing, they're tapping into all the culture, the schools, because they did come from those different areas. Michael came from a good family. He said at the beginning of the documentary, I came from a great family. They taught him those things. So he always, in a sense, took the high road. Yeah. Which is not a bad thing. He kept his nose clean for the most part. Still, he's human, and that's the moral of the story. Still, Mike was human. He still had his challenges. Although he liked to say losing $1.5 million in a year wasn't, I mean, he was making 15 times his teammates' salary, but still, it's like 1.5 million, Mike. Come on, Mike.
And I have to agree. I agree with that point, of course, but I also have to agree with him. There was one point in the documentary where he was like, why am I going to, essentially what he was saying was, why am I going to, change who I am for these group of people who think this one way about me when they know nothing about me. They know that I put my shoes on, I lace them up, I go out here, I play hard. Like, they don't know what I do in my pastime. They don't know, like, and that's just that. I think a lot of people, and obviously things have changed with social media and people want to share everything, but I just think that a lot of athletes who do have like this political background, they have a platform to do that now. And I don't think that the basketball court was a place where Michael Jordan wanted that to be his platform for whatever he stood for off the court.
Absolutely.
And like you said, he was very level-headed. So he wasn't going to, be irate about something that was going on across the nation in a interview post-game after a loss or even after a win. So I couldn't really, I understood that point of it.
And that's why we say he's more Kobe than LeBron. I mean, Kobe was the same way in a sense. Kobe, this man he would get so locked in. That competitive edge would take him to a place. And that's where the competitive edge separated them, because they're not the type to just say, oh, I'm going to beat you. No, they're going to say, I'm going to beat you. Then I'm going to work about it. I'm going to outwork you. Then I'm going to beat you. Then I'm going to talk bad to you. And then I'm going to beat you worse next time. It's like, that takes a special type of energy and focus, and it's like, I understand they went into that zone and didn't come out for some years, whereas LeBron's way more in touch. He has family and he has a team of people who kind of, fill him in.
Yes.
But
he has a
that's
huge
LeBron.
team.
That's why we, oh, absolutely. But that's why we respect him too, to be able to do everything he does and still make time to tap back into the real world. But Mike is special for who he is, the basketball player, the warrior on the court, because I'm going to tell you now, I remember watching Michael Jordan. He wasn't really, on the court, that smooth, suave, the three-piece, that was out the window. You're talking about a dog now.
Oh, yeah.
That'll come at your neck.
Oh, yeah.
So Mike liked to separate those two things, on the court Mike and off the court Mike. And I think he did a heck of a job really, showing young men that aspect of how to be an athlete. Leave it all on the court, all on the field, in between the lines, and then once you step off, being a professional.
And like, when you just think about the episodes that have been out so far, I personally have been entertained. I know we talked about it a little bit, just like the chronological order might not have been like lined up per se, but I think that they've been doing a good job of bringing in guys who were his biggest competitors, who were his best friends, who were, his best coaches, who weren't so much his favorite coaches. And, everyone seems to be speaking as, no filter. I would say this to Mike, or Mike already knows this, or, I think the voice has been pretty even keeled throughout the entire thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like the responses. Even the fact where, there was a clip where they played Isaiah Thomas's video, and them two don't necessarily have the best relationship. But it's awesome for me, I think, to see Mike's peers talk about him. Because I grew up I was a little bit younger, so I got to hear the guys that played now or just retired talk about Mike. But like to hear his actual peers, the Larry Birds, the Charles Oakleys, the Paxtons, all the guys who had really spent some time around him, seen Mike behave. I'm sure there were still some things they didn't say about Mike, just out of respect for Mike. Because just watching that documentary, Mike was a savage. Like Mike looked like he went hard. Yeah. And I mean hard in the sense of just living, it was on to the next. Yeah. Done, boom, on to the next. But I just think the respect level you could see throughout each and every one of these individuals, even though they realize, I think most of these men more than others realize that Mike wasn't perfect. Yeah. But that dog in him was
it irregular. Was commendable.
It was irregular. Like the things, like we were all top competitors, but Mike was still not perfect and still way better. I think that's part of what they're like. He beat us 36 holes and come out and give me 60. Yeah, like, that's Mike.
And I don't want to get long winded about this, but I think the two other people's horns who might have been fans of the Chicago Bulls back then was you can't talk about MJ without talking about Scottie Pippen. Because, when those titles, he had some help. Yes.
Scottie was legit, but that salary breakdown was not legit. Not legit. That was foul.
That was not legit. But that was bogus. But playing on a team with Michael Jordan and knowing that Michael Jordan was going to be the face of a team, but doing the dirty work and still being flashy, still being your own, athlete in person, I think Scottie was a good... And I don't even want to call him a role player, but he did a really good job of being the best role player for that team.
Yeah, he was I would say a co-star, even a sidekick.
Okay, a sidekick.
Yeah, I'm trying to glorify the name a bit, but Scottie was a heck of a player. I mean, a talent. I think obviously Michael was the engine emotionally, and the leader and all those things. But sometimes, and we didn't really take into this aspect, and you may have some input, but the salary difference. Mike, one of those years was making $33 million plus dollars. I believe Scottie was making, 2.5 and on down. I think the next highest guy after Mike was like $2.8 million. Yeah. How do you play? How does that change the dynamic of a team? And you may not know, exactly how it does, but I'm sure you've seen favoritism. Everybody's dealt with that dynamic of favoritism, and you had to think that in that time, if the organization paying Mike $33 million.
I think it's a gut
kissing
check.
Mike's butt.
It's a gut check. It's a pride thing.
Sure.
I can only imagine, the types of scuffles that they might have had that might have not really have been about the money, or might have been about the money, but on the surface it was about something else.
Right.
And I can only imagine, two guys like Pippen and Michael Jordan, very outspoken people, going at it a little bit, or not even them two, but maybe other guys on the team. But like I said, you have to be not only a great player, you have to be a very in check mentally athlete for you to go out on the court, to play your hardest, to go out there and try to win championships and be getting paid significantly less than your co-star.
For sure.
So that's important to speak on. And then Dennis Rodman. I'm sorry, we got to stop talking about this documentary.
You got to touch on Dennis.
But Dennis is a wild character, and he always has been.
Dennis is Dennis.
But I think it's just so interesting. I always think in a teammate's perspective, what I would have done if I had a teammate like him, and I'm kind of scared. I think I might have, but he was a loose cannon.
Yeah.
So to speak.
But he was a special talent.
He was.
That's
I've had a teammate like that, sadly.
Cool aspect. Yeah. And it's crazy because you think of athletes of that caliber being, having to manage those type of guys. I'm trying to think of another top tier athlete. The only other one that really comes to mind, and maybe not in this capacity, but I think of someone like an Allen Iverson. And I say Allen Iverson, not so much I should say the partying. Allen used to go out and, get it in. Allen Iverson used to party, get it in. Then he'd come, Next night, give you 40, 50, play 51 minutes. You know, it's like, how does this guy do it? But they had to give him some leash so that he could be him.
I get that.
So that they could get the best version on the court. And I think that's the challenge they have.
And this is where I see a huge difference between men and females. I think men at that level probably have okay, you know what? I'm going to say at the college level because I imagine that Dennis Rodman, I mean, they spoke a little bit about him as a college athlete, but they didn't really go into like his social life. But I think people who are similar to him in the aspect where they need a leash, they need a little bit of leeway so that they can perform at a high level. I think that there's a mental health issue that needs to be checked in a way where it's like checked on, you know? And I don't know if that is something that was taken care of when he got to the NFL or NBA level. And that's what I think about. Like when I had teammates who were like that, I think as a leader, I was always checking in on them. And so I don't know if he still had that same level of care when it came to him having a leash and him having to actually be checked to make sure that he was mentally okay to have that leash, one, and to two, be on the court and perform at a high level, which he did. So I understand that side of it. But when I think of a team, I think of like from head to toe, for physically, mentally, spiritually, like being in check.
Yeah. And I think that's important and a great note to, you know, for all our leaders, captains, you know, whether it's high school, college, pro level, you know, that becomes part of your responsibility as a leader, even if you don't necessarily want it, you know, to make sure that you have your team around you in the best shape possible. Sometimes that means leading off the court or away from the court. And, you know, transitioning from there, Lauren, I'm going to ask you this because we both grew up with a ton of different idols and a ton of different people that we looked up to that helped us be the leaders and the athletes that we were. Who was the person that you looked up to athletically or just in the life realm growing up that helped you shape some of your thoughts, some of your beliefs as far as on how to be a leader?
So I think that it changes for me, and I'm not going to be long-winded, but I think as a kid growing up, the person I looked up to is Candace Parker. I mentioned her a lot just because that was someone who played basketball, played my position, and I just wanted to be like her. You know, on the court, I wanted to be like her.
Sure.
I think once I hit that college type of realm, I think it became LeBron. Just because he was that leader. He's a dog on the court. You know, he
great person.
He does great things off the court as well. And I think that's really why I respected him and type of leadership that I wanted to resemble as I grew. And recently, my leader has become Michelle Obama. I don't know if you have seen her documentary.
Not yet. I did see a preview.
Yes. It's very inspiring. But even before that, it's more so how she carried herself and the way that she led from not the, you know, I mean, she was obviously the former first lady, but her leading on the side of her husband and her leading in her own way. And so that's what I think that I'm trying to aspire to be now, as I'm in a different realm of my life, not so much basketball or sports right now. Being in news and media, I think I'm trying to find my own way to lead that also helps my team become better.
Yeah.
But also using my skills and the things that I'm interested in. So that's kind of long-winded, but those are my probably three. What about you?
Yeah. And to be honest, like you said, it changes through every phase of life. You know, growing up, it probably was Michael Jordan at one point. Probably was AI at another point, just because, you know, he was such a rebellious athlete, and I've always been, you know, anti-establishment. So, you know, he was kind of a guy I drew to. But, you know, now being a man post-football, even the people I look up to are different. You know, I'm looking up to our, you know, the former entrepreneurs, you know, our forefathers, the black guys that used to really make it happen back in the day, because I'm in this space now. I'm an entrepreneur. I do real estate. I'm building a business. I'm trying to build some money trees, and I'm coming across different challenges, you know, and I'm learning different ways to approach it, and, you know, how to handle things in the past have changed. You know, it's like I used to have that furious competitor, you know, it was like, I was that guy, you know, if you ain't there, brother, we got to come on, let's, you know, it could get fiery.
Yeah.
But in the business world, you have to handle yourself a completely different way. You have to learn these different ways to handle it to allow you to have success. And I find myself looking and researching different people, different historians and what they've done and pulling from them. So I would say, even for me, my idol right now, and it's been one of my idols throughout my life, is probably still a gentleman by the name of Sean Carter, also known as Jay-Z, who's come from nothing, built a brand, built businesses, now is a leader on a lot of different fronts, and has shown a lot of people how to make a lot of money. He's made a lot of millionaires, as he would say.
Yes.
I made about a million millionaires.
He hasn't been perfect.
No, not at all. Not at all. But he's overcome. Yeah. He's been resilient. He's been professional. Still now, he still reaches back and touches and helps young artists, men, women, with their lives and things he's been through, from paying Wayne's taxes to
getting Meek out of jail.
All of these things. A very influential character and somebody that I looked up to still to this day. So shout out Jay-Z and shout out all of our idols, really.
Yeah, for sure.
We appreciate you guys listening to Moses Square, the podcast. We hope you guys tune in next week. We'll bring you another great episode. Peace and love. Don't forget to press like, subscribe, and follow at Dezman, Dezmanm.
You can follow me on Instagram at Lauren.Brielle with 2 E's at the end, and on Twitter at Lauren_Brielle with 2 E's at the end. However, to stay updated on everything Moses Squared, follow us on Instagram at Moses Squared Podcast, which is all one word. There, we will be posting everything from sports news to IGTV videos and more. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll catch you next time. God bless.
Think I got no feelings now. Smoking cause I feel exhausted. I can't put this in no doubt. She said she just wanna make